All right, so welcome to the second meeting for the Franconia District Site-Specific Plan Amendment nominations. I am David Stenson, a planner with the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development, and I'm here this evening with Salem Bush, Mo Ali, and Graham Owen, who are also with the Department of Planning and Development. Additionally, I believe Doug Loescher of the Community Revitalization Section with Fairfax County is also with us this evening. And the purpose, for those of you who weren't at the last meeting, this will probably be a recap, but the purpose of these meetings is to discuss the site-specific plan amendment nominations received in the Franconia District. At this evening's meeting, we will be discussing 4 nominations received in the Springfield CBC.
Controversy over classified material now spreading again.
May I ask that everyone please put themselves on mute? Thank you. So at this evening's meeting, we'll be discussing the 4 nominations we received in the Springfield CBC, the Franconia Springfield Transit Station area, and the Van Dorn Transit Station area. And like I said, the agenda for this evening is to provide an overview of the comprehensive planning process, the site-specific plan amendment process, and then the 4 nominations in the CBC and the transit station areas of the Franconia District. So I'll start with a brief overview of the site-specific plan amendment process, its relationship to the county's comprehensive plan, and why your feedback is important relative to some of the development proposals we will discuss this evening. I realize those of you who were able to attend the last meeting last night have seen this before, but so this portion of the presentation is for those who are here for the first time. So put simply, the site-specific plan amendment process is an opportunity for anyone to submit a proposal for a change to the county's comprehensive plan, specifically for individual properties or a cluster of properties within a small area. But before we begin with the discussion of the SSPA process, I want to review the comprehensive plan and its relation to the SSPA process. The comprehensive plan is a multi-layered document used by both county staff and our elected officials to guide land use decisions across Fairfax County. The document provides recommendations for how land use could be used in the future, how and where future growth should occur, and the protection of our environmental and cultural resources. A comprehensive plan is required for every locality in the state of Virginia. It should also be noted that the policies within the comprehensive plan are not regulatory. However, they do offer important recommendations for managing future growth in the county. The comprehensive plan is comprised of multiple elements, which includes the policy plan, area plans, and the plan map. The policy plan encapsulates land use guidance that applies to every land area within Fairfax County. Examples include policies related to housing affordability, public facilities, and environmental protection. We also have area plan guidance, which provides more detailed long-range planning recommendations that are organized geographically for specific areas within the county. The SSPA nominations we will be reviewing this evening have proposed changes to the area plans. An important component of the recommendations found in our area plan is the county's concept for future development, which is shown on this slide. The concept for future development is the overarching guide for area plans. It provides a general framework for thinking about where most of our growth should occur. Almost all future growth in the county is planned for designated mixed-use centers. Mixed-use centers include the Tyson's Urban Center, transit station areas such as the Franconia, Springfield, and Van Dorn transit station area, and community business centers such as Springfield and Kingstown, and suburban centers, which include the Merrifield and Lorton South Route 1 suburban centers. The county is currently screening proposals for 70 sites that were nominated for consideration during the countywide SSPA nomination cycle. And this is your opportunity to provide feedback for the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to help them determine which nominations should warrant further study as a comprehensive plan amendment on the work program. The screening phase is when key considerations are identified. These considerations include how well does the nomination align with support, and promote the goals and objectives of the county's adopted plan and strategic planning initiatives. And to help us think through the nominations that were submitted, staff will screen each proposal for its merits. I just want to stress that this screening phase is the very beginning of the development process where a new proposal has been submitted to the county for consideration. Nominations that make it through the screening process and are added to the work program will be evaluated in detail as plan amendments. After the community meetings, the feedback received along with staff consideration will be summarized as a planning commission workshop. The Planning Commission will then make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to determine which nominations are added to the Plan Amendment Work Program. The public is invited to participate in these meetings. The dates of these meetings are shown on the right-hand side of this slide. So if a nomination passes screening, it will be added to the Plan Amendment Work Program. And if a nomination does not pass screening, the nomination is removed from consideration and will not be added to the Plan Amendment Work Program. So as I mentioned previously, we are here to seek your feedback about the nominations we received. So all feedback is welcome, and I encourage anyone with a question or comment to fully participate. But before we start with the review of the nominations, I wanted to review a variety of common terms used in the comprehensive plan that will be part of this evening's discussion. Two of the most common terms are density and intensity. These are terms that refer to the quantity of development and will be used in our discussion later this evening. So residential density is most often measured in dwelling units per acre. Fewer dwelling units per acre is a less dense development. For example, a single-family detached dwelling unit is often located on a 1 to 2 or 3 to 4 acre dwelling unit per acre development and is considered low-density development. Townhouses are often at a slightly higher density of 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre, and multifamily is often at a higher density, which is typically 16 to 20 dwelling units per acre for garden-style apartments and 30 to 40 dwelling units per acre for mid to high-rise developments. Non-residential intensity is often measured as floor area ratio, or FAR, which is calculated by dividing the floor area of the building space by the land area of a development site. So higher FARs are indicative of a larger development. Additionally, residential mixed-use development, which contains both residential and non-residential uses, is also calculated by a maximum FAR. We will discuss a few residential mixed-use proposals this evening. In the example shown here, a development at a 1.0 FAR equates to a building size as equal to the size of the parcel, which is 100,000 square feet in this example. The building in this example could take a variety of forms. The examples shown here include a 2-story building with a 50,000 square foot floor plate that covers half of the 100,000 square foot parcel. And the other example is a 4-story building with 4 25,000 square foot floor plates, which cover 1/4 of a 100,000 square foot parcel. So next, we're going to review 4 nominations we received in the Franconia district. Staff has taken a cursory look at each nomination and will provide preliminary considerations. The nominators will also briefly discuss their proposals and answer any general questions that you may have. So, like I said previously, we're reviewing a total of 8 nominations for the Franconia district. This slide shows the locations of these 8 nominations. This evening, we will discuss 4 nominations in the Springfield CBC, the Franconia Springfield Transit Station area, and the Van Dorn Transit Station area, which are shown in blue on the map. The nominations shown in red on the map were discussed at last evening's in-person meeting that we had at Franconia Elementary School. So the first nomination we will review this evening is for a 5-acre parcel that's located on Springfield Center Drive in the Franconia Springfield Transit Station area.
David, real quick, before you jump into the nominations, I just wanted to note Carol Allen has her hand raised. So this might be a good point to just pause for a second and see if she has a question. Carol, did you have a question?
Well, I didn't raise my hand. I put a question in the chat, but I was just wondering if you had decided which nominations will be discussed at each one of the planning commission workshops.
Oh, like which nominations on which nights?
Yes.
No, not yet. We're still figuring that out. But it's going to be based on availability of the nominators as well as staff to attend those meetings. But we're figuring that out now, and once we have the information, we'll post it on the SSPA website. But don't worry, that information is forthcoming most likely in the next week or so.
Okay. Thank you. I've had several questions after last night's meeting, so thank you.
Yep, sure, no problem.
Okay, so the first nomination we will review this evening is for a 5-acre parcel on Springfield Center Drive in the Franconia Springfield Transit Station area. The parcel is planned for industrial use up to 0.35 FAR. The surrounding area is planned for and developed with light industrial and office uses. The nomination site is adjacent to the Northern Virginia Community College Medical Education Campus, which is located northwest of the property. And it's also near the Transportation Safety Administration's newly constructed headquarters and the GSA Par Warehouse, which are both located north of the nomination property. The parcel to the northeast, which is currently used as a warehouse and distribution center, is planned for office use up to a 0.2 FAR. There is also light industrial use to the south. There is vacant and vegetated land and floodplain to the south of this area along Long Branch Stream Valley. And the tributaries of Long Branch Stream Valley separate the site from the Franconia Springfield Metro Station and Joe Alexandra Transportation Center, which is located to the northeast. Across the railroad tracks to the southeast is Windsor Estates, a neighborhood comprised of single-family detached homes. The nomination has proposed increasing the base level recommendation to a 0.5 FAR, which would reflect the applicable zoning development standard and the adopted plan for the surrounding parcels. The nomination has also proposed adding an option for residential mixed use or continuing care up to 1.5 FAR. Sorry about that. I was having trouble moving it forward. Some of the preliminary considerations from staff are that the nomination has suggested that industrial recommendation does not reflect the best use of the parcel when considering the land use on nearby properties and its close proximity to the Franconia Springfield Metro Station. Additionally, comprehensive policy plan for transit-oriented development recommends the highest intensities for areas located a 1/4 mile radius from a metro station, and then tapering down within the 1/2 mile radius or a 5 to 10 minute walk from a metro station. An approximately 5 to 10 minute walk from the metro station platform would be made possible for this parcel via the extension of Frontier Drive. However, it should be noted that existing pedestrian access to the metro station is longer than a 5 to 10 minute walk. Another consideration is residential uses for this site would be out of character and isolated because the area is immediately surrounded by industrial uses. However, the Springfield Crossing apartments are located on a nearby parcel in a portion of the industrial park north of the GSA warehouse site. Finally, should this nomination be added to the work program for formal review, consideration should be given to the expansion of the study area to avoid a piecemeal review of individual sites. So now, next I want to turn this over to Tim Sampson, who is representing the nominator, and he'll provide an overview of the proposed nomination. And Tim, did you want to show your screen?
Yeah, if that works for you.
Yeah.
Pressure's on. Here we go. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, David. As David said, my name's Tim Sampson, and I'm outside land use counsel for Inova Health System. Also on tonight from Inova is Dominic Boniuto. Dominic is a director of Inova's government and community affairs team, and also David Sittler, who is an outside consultant on land use and development matters for Inova. And many of you, I think, are familiar with our team from last year's efforts with respect to Innova's site at the at what will become the Franconia Springfield Hospital. So it's good to see many of you again. Tonight, just a quick overview of what we intend to cover. Very high level. We're going to show you where the property is, give you a little background about the property in Innova's course of ownership, the planning and zoning history of it, and what Innova intends or is requesting at this point. Also discuss some high-level county planning principles, some of which David has touched on for the transit station areas. We're going to mention the result of an economic development study for Springfield that was just completed in the fall of 22, and I think probably bears a lot on some of the other nominations that you'll hear about tonight as well. And then quickly just make our land use case for why we think this nomination should be moved forward to the county's work plan to study further and get into the real details. And high level, that's because we think that the current plan recommendations for the site don't match the facts on the ground, and they don't match the county's well-established planning principles for the site. So without further ado, here is the location, and we put right in the middle of the graphic the metro station, because that's a lot about what this description is about. Obviously, other key factors, here's the Springfield Town Center up here, Franconia Springfield Parkway to the north, I-95 to the west. And over here on the outskirt of the 1/2 mile radius from Metro is Innova's other site nearby within the 1/2 mile. And this is the site of the existing healthplex and the hospital location that's now zoning approved as of last fall and is in process now with further design and permitting, and Innova's moving right along with that. So here within the, again, within the 1/2 mile radius is the property we're talking about down here in blue. It is a 5-acre site that Innova owned. Innova bought that and the Northern Virginia Community College site together back in the late 90s. And at that time was talking about partnerships with Northern Virginia Community College and the possibility of doing some sort of medical center there. About the same time, Innova bought the healthplex site, and they ended up developing the healthplex over here instead of here. And ever since, this site has sat vacant. Again, it's within the 1/2 mile radius of the metro station. Other key features, I know many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the planned extension of Frontier Drive south of the Parkway, which would provide even greater connectivity and access from this land bay to the metro station. The property right now is currently zoned to an industrial zoning district called I-4. It allows a 0.5 FAR by right in its zoning, but the comp plan currently plans the property for light industrial at 0.35 FAR. So the comp plan, somewhat unusually, recommends about 1/3 less development capacity than the zoning would allow. And that's kind of the basis for our number one, new option, which is to bring, the base level comprehensive plan recommendation at least up to, what the zoning would otherwise allow. But more importantly, we look at the property in the longer term and think that industrial use of the site, though that has been the pattern here for the generation prior or so, and continues to be for other sites in the vicinity, the area is developing away from industrial use, and I think that's consistent with its location as close as it is to the metro station. And so what we're proposing is an additional option described over here for the 1.5 FAR that David mentioned for either residential or potentially a continuing care use. So a lot of words on this page, but the summary, the point of it and the summary of it is to describe, one of the key planning principles throughout Fairfax County, and it shows up in almost all, if not all, of the major county, guiding documents, the policy plan, the comprehensive plan, the strategic plan to facilitate the economic success of the county, and the Fairfax County strategic plan. And that concept is to encourage opportunities for higher densities and mixes of uses within transit station areas, right? And the objective is, I think, obvious because it provides an opportunity for people to live closer to the places they work, for mixed use to support fewer and fewer car trips and less distances, traveled in cars for trips that need to be taken. So all of those, documents contain that kind of simple premise that that's where you want, new development to occur, and you want it to occur in a mix of uses. The next slide shows this is, I kind of gathered this looking at some of the planning history here. The point of this slide is that the concept I just described for this site is not new. You can see references back to February of 1994 when the TSA was first planned, and the intent of the land use recommendation at that time to promote development of mixed use and high density residential as an option to existing industrial uses. And here's a map I had found from as far back as the 2000 comprehensive plan showing residential right on the very site where we're talking about now. So again, the idea of higher density mix of use within this very particular area is something that has existed for a very long time. So how is that principle playing out on the ground today? How does it work both in the specific plan text for the site, and how does it work out in connection with what's built around it? And my answer to that question is that the current comprehensive plan, which we're now seeking to change somewhat, meets the county objectives and meets the facts on the ground in part, but not in whole. And that's what we're here to hopefully advance a conversation about. Land Unit P is where we're located, and as you see, the recommendations in the current comprehensive plan are very consistent in some respects with the idea of having greater density and mix of uses in the transit station area. And so to our north, we have property that is planned and zoning approved for 2.0 FAR in an office use. We got property that is planned, zoned, and built at closer to 1.2 FAR. We've got property over here, not as intensely developed or approved, but as a residential use. And so we compare that to what we've looked at down here at 0.35 FAR industrial use. And what it says to us is that the area is growing in a direction, that the county has long encouraged, but this site remains hampered by what I think is a kind of a relic in the comprehensive plan, keeping it, at a 0.35 FAR and light industrial use in this proximity to metro. I submit is an anomaly if you compare sites like this throughout the county. So the other point, as I said, I wanted to talk about was this market study that the county's Economic Development Authority undertook and completed in the fall for the Springfield area. This is an image here from the study of the area they looked at. This quadrant right here is the area where this particular property is. You can see, so the study is much broader area than that, but looking at Springfield, and it's a long study, and there's a lot of very interesting information in it. But what was most compelling to us was looking at residential use within that Springfield area. And what you see when you look at the residence to job ratio is that Franconia Springfield has a very low ratio. It's second only to Tyson's, and what that means is it's very much a commercial center, and it has those characteristics of people having to leave the center to go back home or to go find other services. So what is happening in these other centers, like as the study points out, Tyson's and Merrifield? Well, since 2010, there've been almost 5,200 multifamily units added in Tyson's, about 2,800 added in Merrifield, and unbelievably to me, zero in the Franconia Springfield area. Zero multifamily units added since at least 2010. And then play it forward, what's on the way? Another close to 11,000 units coming into Tyson's to help balance that idea of mix of uses in proximity to transit options. In Franconia Springfield, 460, right? So 460 in the pipeline, zero since 2010 at least, compared to 4,000 built since 2010 in Tyson. I mean, the magnitude is not the same, right? Tyson's much bigger, but the point is, I hope, obvious that it is a area that is very ready for some additional multifamily development. So with all that together, the quick summary, again, that we've got a site sitting within a transit station area in close proximity to the metro. The site, it is reflected in all kinds of county planning documents to encourage additional development at higher densities and a mix of uses. The current plan falls short of that when it comes to its recommendations for this property. The current plan works for meeting those principles with respect to the property right next door to the site, right? Again, the property right next door is planned, zoned, built at between 1 and 2 FAR. This is a third to a sixth of that, the recommendation for this site. That's in contrary to the current market and analysis that I think is obvious to everyone, reflecting the need for more multifamily residential development. And of course, then we think all these factors come together to support the idea of promoting an option for residential or, again, continued care use on the site. And obviously a lot of detail to come in these discussions, but one we truly believe is worthy of moving forward to the work program for additional review. You saw on David's slide earlier a very conceptual graphic of what a residential layout could look like on the site. This is, again, just really a placeholder for how it could work, and we'd love to have the opportunity to get further into a conversation where a residential use discussion could take shape, and we could elaborate much further on this. So that ends our presentation. Thank you very much, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tim. I guess now I'd like to open the floor for comments and questions. And I guess before we start, I'd like everyone to think about, what we should consider when evaluating these nominations. Do you see any opportunities associated with the nominations, and are there any concerns that staff should be aware of? So if anyone has a question, you can please raise your hand. And I see in the chat we had some questions about, Tim, maybe you can answer this, about how does your site impact the potential proposal for relocating the FBI headquarters to Springfield?
Yeah, to my knowledge, it has no impact on that. I'm have to plead a little bit of ignorance and not know exactly what that proposal is at this time or concept is at that time. But my understanding is, and I can pull this, maybe I should have kept sharing longer. My back up there. My understanding is, and Dave or Dominic, please jump in, or anyone, that the idea would be, potentially in this area here, and we've certainly not heard anything on Inova side about this property needing to be or wanting to be part of that. And we think that, if something like that were to occur, and notice I said like that, it could be, any next thing for other industrial uses down here are all going to raise the same questions here, like, does the comprehensive plan match what the site ought to be given its location?
So Tim, this is Dave Sittler. When FBI first came out in their first solicitation, that's got to be almost 10 years ago, Inova and Boston Properties agreed that Inova would throw its land in when the FBI was looking at what is now the TSA headquarters. With the fact that they landed TSA, it's a very, very unlikely that Innova's property could be included because the TSA is literally between Inova and the GSA warehouses.
Thank you. I see we have Nicole has her hand raised. Nicole?
I posted in the chat, but I just want to say that TSA was built before COVID, and it opened like the week of COVID, and they have really not been in the office as they were anticipated to, and are still not. But I mean, that's going to come, but just not right now. And so no one's really seen the impact that the TSA traffic will make on that area when they're actually fully back in the office. And I think there's no real complaint on the putting whatever you decide to put in that little square, but something really needs to be done about the fact that Loisdale Road goes from 2 to 1 lane before you get to that road to turn left there. I don't even remember what the name of it is, but the road that TSA is on. And then the fact that Frontier Drive doesn't have an entrance into that spot. If that could all be solved, I think you'd have no problem getting people to approve this. It's just that it would cause enormous backups, especially with an apartment complex being built at Springfield Town Center on that corner. Something just needs to be done with the land infrastructure before you put another something in there. That's all.
Thank you for
And I
that
think-
comment.
To that, to recall where we're at. I mean, we don't disagree with you, Allison. The process is here that if we can, kind of prevail in the idea that there's enough merit to study this, and advance this, that's what we're asking. Give us the chance to go study this and demonstrate the traffic, pardon me, the traffic associated with this site. And we would, of course, in the context of that, get into what all the assumptions were about the TSA and the other sites around there, and understand, further where that Frontier Drive extension presumably would play a big role in helping alleviate current conditions. There's a comment in the chat too about, I think this may be related, and Allison, I guess it maybe is the same if you're about the 240 units and the 137 units. I just want to make clear too, those are these are existing. This is the Springfield Crossing, I believe it's called, project that was built, I think in 2000, 2001 or something like that there too. So that reference is to what is already there. And we think that, for one thing, you heard David say that if we had residential here, it would be kind of an anomaly for the area, but there is, that many units already built, a bit older now, but in that, in the very same area. So we don't see adding residential as some sort of something new.
Hugo has a question. Hugo?
Yes, hi. I just was wondering, do we have or do you have any kind of a timeline for these, for the studies, and if everything goes well, development and construction?
Pardon me, for this site, we do not. And we are, Onova is not certain that it would proceed with a residential project, but we want to have the opportunity to do that. We think that the use is well suited for that site, but there is not a particular timeline. There is not a particular developer, of residential that we have along here that we would say to you, we've got to have this done immediately so that this could proceed. We think that given, where we're at is the opportunity, as you heard David describe, to nominate a particular site, and from our perspective, it's a site that, these other sites somehow got planned without taking a global look at, the bigger area. And now you've got bigger buildings here and sites kind of on a one at a time basis proceeding toward those broader county purposes. Whatever effort it took to bring those sites to that level didn't include this one. And we feel like we're kind of now catching up, and the opportunity exists now to throw our hat in the ring, and because through the SSPA process, and go about it in a methodical way, adding an option for the residential use into the comprehensive plan.
It looks like there's also a question too about, is the area in a floodplain?
There's no floodplain on this site. There is, is that the best? I think there's a lot of, broad, there's a stream valley in this area, and then it comes through here too. So all of this All these projects here are, walking, getting to Metro along this route here today, and then in the future would have even a quicker shot up here through the Frontier Drive Extended. But to my knowledge, and again, anybody more familiar, please correct me, the space in here that you see, is green is Stream Valley now, and would not, be likely to be the subject of future development.
And Carol has her hand up. Carol?
Yes, using this map, could you give me, basically you've got the office next door, the community college next door. Could you give me a better explanation of the streets and what's on the south and across whatever that little street is on to the right of the site that you're talking about? Because it does look kind of surrounded by office, and it would be, yes, there's a residential up above, but I'd like a better understanding of what's surrounding it.
So right now, you may want to mute. I think I'm hearing myself in it. Thanks. The Springfield Center Drive is what wraps around the bigger area around here and provides that's what the streets are, right? So you can drive around the whole area kind of this way, and in fact, our blunt, blocks here are kind of blocking your view of it, but it wraps around like this. And so today there is light industrial, kind of light warehousing going on here and here. There's, again, the Inova site is vacant. There is the TSA building and parking garage here. The Northern Virginia Community College facility is here. This is another lower density warehouse, and then this is the big warehouse. The existing residential that I described before is right here. This is a building with I guess I'd call it a mid-rise. I think it's 8 or 10 stories here, and then lower garden apartment projects here. Units here. Is that helpful?
Yes, I haven't driven through that since the TSA site got approved, but it just does. I'll have to go drive through there again. It does look a little isolated from other residential. Thank you.
Sure. Well, and it again, we're not helping the conversation right now by having these, it's kind of the blunt instrument approach to showing what's going on here. There's a travel way that goes between the TSA building and the garage, which would be, an obvious, pedestrian route to the metro and kind of connectivity to the other residential around here. The roads, the internal roads, it's all part of kind of a private association right now. There's a roadway back here that comes off of Springfield Center Drive, and I believe that's the Springfield Court where we get our address, and it wraps down along the Northern Virginia Community College site like this. Ultimately, the Frontier Drive extension would come in, as I understand it, and I don't know that these plans are final. It kind of runs through the middle of this building right here, and then wraps around. But the Inova site would have access as it currently does, and be able to connect to Frontier Drive.
Thanks, Tim. If no one has, if there are no more questions, we can move on to the next nomination. Does anyone else have any questions? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, we can move on to the next nomination. Again, thanks Tim for the presentation.
All right, you're very welcome. There, I'm seeing it. I'm just trying to pick up the chat comments. So someone asked, would it be an Inova-owned building or sold? And that is an answer that is unknown at this time. Likely, I would say at this time it would not be an Inova-owned building if it were a residential building. Oh, sorry, I see Dave has answered that too. So thanks, David. Again, just trying to catch up. If I'm missing anything, I apologize. We left our Dominic's at least email there in the presentation. So if anyone has other questions, please reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. The next nomination we will review is for 6 parcels that total 8 acres on the northern and southern sides of Vine Street and Land Unit B of the Van Dorn Transit Station area. This site is located between the Capitol Beltway and the CSX Virginia Passenger Rail Authority and Metro right-of-way. The nomination site is located directly south of the Van Dorn Street Metro Station and the Fairfax County Alexandria line, and east of South Van Dorn Street. The site consists of 1 large vacant and wooded parcel on the eastern portion and 5 smaller parcels containing commercial and light industrial uses on the north and south sides of Vine Street. The current comprehensive plan recommendations for the subject parcels are industrial use up to 0.5 FAR at the base level, with an option for office or mixed use development up to 1.0 FAR with conditions, and additional options and intensities greater than 1.0 FAR under additional conditions. The plan recommendations for this area include a mix of uses consistent with transit-oriented development to support the Van Dorn Metro Station. But the plan also recognizes that topographic and environmental factors, limited road capacity, and limited access between portions of the transit station area and the metro station may constrain full implementation of development at the Van Dorn TSA. Additionally, a planned bridge across I-495 is envisioned to connect Vine Street and Oakwood Road, which Oakwood Road is located south of the Beltway. And improving vehicular and pedestrian access within the TSA and the metro station is also recommended by the plan. The plan also recommends limiting office industrial development in Land Unit B until suitable road improvements facilitate higher intensity transit-oriented development. So the nomination this evening proposes to modify the comprehensive plan recommendations to align with the ongoing I-495 South Side Express Lane study, which is evaluating options to extend the express lane system on the section of the Beltway between the Mixing Bowl and the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. As part of the study, VDOT is evaluating interchange improvements at the Van Dorn Street Transit Station, the Van Dorn Street interchange with the Beltway. The nomination proposes adding flexibility to the plan recommendations to accommodate the transportation solutions proposed from VDOT's Express Lane study, while continuing to promote TOD development in Land Unit B adjacent to the metro station. It also proposes to combine both existing plan options into one option for an intensity above a 1.0 FAR. The transportation options it has proposed include removing the recommendation for a bridge connecting Vine Street to Oakwood Road and replacing it with plan text recommending the construction of transportation improvements to facilitate access to and from Vine Street that are sufficient to support plan redevelopment. The nomination has also proposed adding plan language to minimize the need for vehicular access and parking while encouraging the use of Metro. Some preliminary considerations from staff are the nomination parcels are incontiguous and adjacent to light industrial uses to the west. Also, the future improvements to the Capitol Beltway may limit redevelopment capacity along Vine Street. There was also a nearby proposed plan amendment along Oakwood Road that many of you know about, and this would potentially be impacted by the proposed changes to the transportation network within the Van Dorn Transit Station area, such as the bridge connecting Vine Street to Oakwood Road across the Capitol Beltway. Additionally, the community has recommended deferring the Oakwood Road plan amendment until additional information from VDOT is available about the right-of-way impacts from the I-495 Express Lane study. And finally, if this nomination is added to the work program, any proposed changes to the comprehensive plan in this area should consider recommendations of the I-495 Express Lane study, the impacts of residential setbacks from the Capitol Beltway, and transportation generated noise in the nearby area. So next, I want to turn this presentation over to Mark Looney, who is representing the nominator. Mark, would you like to share your presentation?
Sure. Thanks, David. Appreciate the opportunity. As David said, my name is Mark Looney. I'm a land use and zoning attorney with Cooley representing Ally Richmond, which is the owner of the subject parcels for the nomination. I'll pull up on my screen real quick a bit of a presentation. David, let me know if that's up on the screen for everybody to see.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, super. So just to set the context, the staff's graphics were a little more zoomed in than what I'll start with, which is this is the Vine Street corridor here, which is accessed off of South Van Dorn Street on the north side of the Capitol Beltway, off of right at the city-county line between the city of Alexandria to the north, Fairfax County to the south. The Van Dorn Street Metro Station sits here and runs east and west through this area, as does a CSX railroad track. Currently, the Vine Street's access is essentially one way in and one way out, which is via South Van Dorn Street at this at-grade intersection here. North and south of the intersection are two grade separated interchanges, one within the city of Alexandria, getting down to Metro Road and over to the Metro station itself. And then on the south side, we have the Beltway interchange and South Van Dorn Street headed down towards Kingstown, down to the south. The area that he was talking about, Oakwood Road, is over here on the south side of the project. So the Vine Street corridor is essentially pinched by a grade separated interchange, a metro line, and a CSX railroad line, the Capitol Beltway, and grade separated interchanges to the south as well. And so as a consequence of that, the current comprehensive plan limits its baseline planning recommendation to the 0.5 FAR, really reflecting the industrial uses that were on the site before the metro station and the Beltway actually came into being. And so a lot of the development out there predates the construction of both of those transportation improvements. But in recognition of the site's proximity to the South Van Dorn Street Metro, it provides options for redevelopment into mixed use development, provided that it meets certain conditions as David set forth. One is the dedication of right-of-way for interchange improvements at South Van Dorn and the Beltway, and two, contributing to the design and construction of a bridge over the Beltway linking Vine Street and Oakwood Road. Importantly, for purposes of this nomination, that transportation improvement is the only one mentioned as in the comprehensive plan as the expected connection to Vine Street in the event of improvements at the intersection or interchange of the Beltway and South Van Dorn Street. It's very specific that it needs to be a bridge linking Vine Street and Oakwood Road. Similarly, if the development intensity goes above a 1.0 FAR, then there's an expectation under the current plan for a, quote, substantial contribution towards that bridge. Again, only one transportation improvement is envisioned in the plan to provide secondary or future access into the Vine Street corridor under the TOD development recommendations, with the exact alignment of that bridge to be determined in connection with the rezonings. This graphic over here to the right shows the general location of that proposed bridge here, coming down off of Oakwood Road, crossing the Beltway, and then landing on Vine Street and providing either primary or secondary access from the bridge over the Beltway. As David mentioned, the VDOT study of the future hot lanes expansion in this area is considering a number of options, many of which may either alter or preclude the construction of the bridge as identified in the comprehensive plan due to interchange improvements that are currently under development by VDOT. In other words, the solution that is identified in the comprehensive plan may not in fact be feasible or ultimately come to fruition under the hot lanes proposal, simply because VDOT redesigns the interchange in a way that either precludes that improvement or makes it or provides other alternatives to provide access to Vine Street not currently contemplated in the comprehensive plan. This is, as you probably are aware, the study corridor for the improvements to the Beltway for the Hot Lanes expansion. The interchange is here, and when you look at VDOT's plans for where they are evaluating potential interchanges, the South Van Dorn Street location here is a prime candidate for substantial or significant revisions to how this interchange is constructed and access is provided long term. Any of you that have traveled the Hot Lanes to the west and to the north up to Tyson's understand that certain interchanges have slip ramps that come directly up or down onto the Beltway to Braddock Road or other Lee Highway, other connections, Jones Branch Drive and Tyson's, that change substantially how circulation in and around those areas is addressed long term. Because the comprehensive plan only provides for one alternative for access to Vine Street under a redevelopment scenario, and because of VDOT's ongoing study, the purpose of the nomination is really to add flexibility to accommodate whatever improvements result from VDOT's study, while continuing to promote the transit-oriented development that the comprehensive plan currently recommends for this area. As David mentioned, it consolidates the land use recommendations into a single one, because whether it's below a 1.0 or whether it's above a 1.0, alternate access into that corridor under a redevelopment scenario is going to need to be provided. It's possible, for example, that VDOT could, in connection with the reconstruction of the interchange, provide slip ramps directly toward Vine Street from the Beltway as one access point. Similarly, it could provide grade separated access from Van Dorn Street into the Vine Street corridor as part of the Hot Lanes construction. Said another way, VDOT may, in fact, as part of the reconstruction of the Hot Lanes or the construction of the Hot Lanes, address and resolve whatever the connectivity challenges are for Vine Street as currently described in the comprehensive plan, because if they cut off access to the entire Vine Street corridor, it likely results in a condemnation proceeding, because unless they provide alternate access to that corridor, it's effectively a taking. And so what the landowners would like to do is continue to work with VDOT on the ultimate solution for access into Vine Street under the Hot Lanes proposal, but proactively address the fact that the comprehensive plan only anticipates one solution when in fact there may be many. If we were to delay the submission of the nomination until after VDOT completes its study, then we would have to go through this cycle after the study is completed, and the initiation process could further delay the landowners for years or more while they're preparing and having a subsequent nomination adopted. And so the idea is to essentially put a placeholder in, allow for flexibility to match whatever VDOT's ultimate design decision is on the area, and to provide the opportunity to not have to come forward a second time in the year's future. As indicated, this was a conceptual plan for perhaps how the area could lay out, but again, it's dependent and contingent upon the access solutions that VDOT comes forward with. So with that, I'll stop and answer any questions that folks have.
Thanks, Mark. So if anyone has, someone has their hand raised, it looks like
you.
That's me, actually. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. If anyone has a question, please raise their hand. It looks like Carol has her hand raised. Carol?
Yes, my community borders Oakwood, and Vine is obviously on the other side. Given that the VDOT decision for what they're going to do with the extension of the toll lanes could possibly, and as the nominator indicated, could possibly make anything built on Vine not viable. And given that, I feel strongly that this application should be deferred until after VDOT has made its decision. It doesn't make sense to me to look at making modifications to the comprehensive plan and possibly zoning when we don't know what, if anything, can be built on this property. So I think it should be, my recommendation would be to defer it until we know more what's possible there.
I'll just say from the landowner's perspective, we're all waiting with bated breath as well.
I'm sure.
And it doesn't just affect, I should note, it doesn't just affect the properties that were the subject of the nomination. It really affects the entire corridor. The nominators just, or this particular set of property owners didn't have an ability to pull in the other owners, but I think we all acknowledge that it affects everyone through the corridor, and some parcels are likely to be condemned and some parcels may survive. And we just don't know what those are at the moment. But we're trying to be proactive in getting a seat at the table and trying to align the county's plans with whatever VDOT's plans are at a future date.
But we can't do that until we know what VDOT's plans are.
Understood. I'm not disputing that.
And it looks like Tom Sachs has his hand raised. Tom?
I want to tag on to what Carol said, and I put it in the comments. In the last SSPA cycle, we deferred the proposal for Oakwood Road because there's not enough information on the Beltway. If we let this proposal go and give these developers a placeholder, then that's really unfair to the property owners on Oakwood that we deferred until we had more information. I would also like to see this deferred and combined with Oakwood so that we're really looking at a whole geographic area rather than doing one side of the Beltway at one time and the other side at a different time. These really need to be planned together, not independently.
Thank you, Tom. And next we have Rebecca Gomez. Rebecca?
Hello, thank you for your great presentation today. I'm just piping in to show my support for this proposal. I really strongly believe that land zoned for industrial uses near a metro center is low public utility. And I understand that there are a lot of different concerns voiced here today, and I think that they need to be addressed. But I think that by passing this proposal, it gives us the opportunity to start to unravel this and to not waste more time waiting years and years and years until it's the exact right thing, and to start now looking at how we can build this neighborhood into a really vibrant, walkable, mixed use development. And I think this whole entire area, to Tom's point, I completely agree. We do need to look at the area, and I encourage all of those on the line to consider this entire Van Dorn or Eisenhower West area and see that as a larger movement towards this area becoming a destination instead of just a drive-through area that has maybe a smoke shop in a strip mall somewhere. So I think there's a lot of potential, and I really appreciate everyone here sharing their background today.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think Ann Blass is next. Ann?
Hello, I just wanted to echo again what Carol and Tom said about waiting until we had more information from the 495 Express study, and also the benefit of combining the Vine Street proposal with the Oakwood proposal, or at least being able to look at them in concert with each other, because both of those proposals discuss the other property in some way, or at least they allude to them, or it's impossible to discuss one without the other. I also have to agree with Rebecca. I do think that there's some value in looking at this area and looking for a future for this area. It's not an indefinite wait to wait for the 495 express study to finish, though. That's actually a specific thing to wait for. So I recommend, again, just echoing the comments about this is not the time to look at this just yet. Thanks.
Next. Ed Joseph has his hand up. Ed? Oh, Ed, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I wanted to add my voice to those of Carol and Tom and Anne that this is simply premature. We don't know what's going on with the Beltway. In addition, we don't know whether this should even actually be considered part of the transit station area, because as things are now, even though as the bird flies, this is close to the metro station, people aren't birds, and without a pedestrian crossing from Vine Street to the metro station, it's you know, it really doesn't relate well to the metro station at all. And you know, this is this is really tied up with Oakwood Road, as Tom pointed out. You know, we need to know whether there's going to be the bridge connecting Oakwood and Vine, either yes or no, because that changes everything. And without that knowledge, without knowing what's going on with the Beltway, without knowing about the connections, the possible connection between Oakwood and Vine, without knowing whether there will be a pedestrian connection between Vine and the metro station, we have no idea what we're talking about. And this is just totally premature. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments. So does anyone else have any comments? Tom, do you have another comment? Or is that from your hand raised from the first time? Or Rebecca, your hand's still raised too. Did you have another additional comment?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we have Renko Hardison has his hand raised.
Hello. I have two questions. So the first question is, when do we expect a decision? And the second question is, what is the cost to waiting? Is that cost acceptable to not having development at all? That's something I'm concerned about. If we wait, do we miss the window where the project is no longer viable and the investors move on to something else and the area stays undeveloped? And does the need to actually have that development outweigh the risks from not waiting?
So I'll answer that two ways. One, with respect to the specific VDOT schedule, my understanding was that VDOT is supposed to come forward with some preliminary design concepts in early 2023, whether that's January or whether it's April. I don't know the answer to that. A number of the people who had been working on this for VDOT retired, and so I don't know sort of where that stands internally with them at the moment. Once VDOT comes out with preliminary concepts, they're supposed to have them vetted in the community. They're in part of the concepts that they're working on are to satisfy the federal regulations, NEPA and otherwise, for environmental impact analyses. And that process is supposed to conclude sometime all of it's supposed to conclude sometime in late 2023, early 2024, according to VDOT's schedule. Whether they're still on track for that, I don't know the answer. with respect to your question about the development potential, it sort of has two answers. One answer is that we'd all like some finality over how access to this corridor is going to be maintained in connection with the hot lanes improvements, and the extent to which it's going to impact all or any of the parcels on Vine Street in terms of future viability and their access. So in that respect, we're all kind of waiting to see what VDOT comes forward with as a general matter. I think to your question about the timing for the development, one of the frustrations that I know the property owners have is that this question of access to this corridor has been like a sword of Damocles hanging over their head for more than a decade, with no real sense as to how or when alternate access to this corridor could, should, or would be provided. Even though it's been listed in the comprehensive plan, it's not anything that has risen to the level of getting close to implementation anywhere along the line. And frankly, I think we look at the hot lane study and the ensuing improvements as a way to move the conversation forward in whatever fashion, because the property owners have been sitting and waiting for a decade or more for any kind of solution to this question. So there's a level of frustration at inaction as opposed to frustration with action, which is in part why we want to take the specificity of the solution out of the comprehensive plan.
Hey, David, I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Carol, go ahead.
I just wanted to make one final comment that one of the concerns that Mr. Looney mentioned and was in the nomination is concerned that the VDOT decision would eliminate the access from Van Dorn to Vine, in which case the proposal showed connectivity to Vine via Oakwood. And given that as a possibility, it doesn't make sense to look at these two applications, these properties independently. Because if Vine becomes dependent on Oakwood for getting in and out, then Oakwood has to be at the table as well. As the owners on
just to clarify, I wasn't suggesting that the future access post VDOT study or post hot lanes expansion was required to be from Oakwood. Instead, I was pointing out the fact that the current comprehensive plan envisions the only access being Oakwood. In other words, I'm trying to change the notion that Oakwood is the only solution rather than saying Oakwood, rather than the opposite.
Okay.
I'm trying to eliminate that expectation as opposed to double down on it.
Well, I'll go back and reread your proposal. I thought that was sort of what was in the proposal, but thank you. But it's just a concern.
Understood.
A bigger issue.
And Rebecca has another question.
Hi, so just to make sure I understand correctly, from my understanding, this nomination is to be able to begin exploring this possibility. This is not a commitment to saying this is 100% the final plan. It's just agreeing that the current zoning is not appropriate for this plot of land, and then potentially changing the zoning to consider other options, knowing that there are potentially years of studies that will come forth. Is that the case?
I'll say it slightly differently, which is that the comprehensive plan already anticipates transit-oriented development that is predicated on a single solution from a transportation standpoint, which is a bridge from Oakwood. And what we're trying to position the properties to do is to continue to have the recommendation of transit-oriented development, but not be beholden to a single solution for how access is provided, and to instead be able to have flexibility in the plan to respond to whatever the final solution is that VDOT has for the study. So we're not changing the expectation for what the property would be used for. We're trying to provide flexibility for how the property would be accessed post construction of hot lanes improvements, whatever they may be. And we're not presupposing in the nomination what those solutions are. We're just eliminating a very prescriptive solution that we don't actually think may be part of the final solution. Or if it is, it wouldn't be under the conditions that the current comprehensive plan contemplates.
So in the interest of time, we need to move on. But Carol, did you have another question? Did you mean to have your hand raised?
I didn't have another question.
Okay, well, I'll take one more from Anne.
Hi, since we are talking about the transit-oriented development aspect of it, I think Ed brought up the point that there's no connection between Vine Street and the metro. But I can't recall, in your presentation, did you touch on that? Or, I mean, it's actually a really big missing part of this whole discussion, and I just can't recall if you already mentioned that.
So I didn't mention it, and thanks for the question. In short, the comprehensive plan already provides a recommendation that before any TOD development is authorized, that access to the metro stations be part of the solution, and we're not proposing to change that expectation. So any rezoning application that were to come forward would still have to demonstrate and most likely provide access from Vine Street to the metro station as part of the development. We're not changing that piece of it. We just, we've got bigger fish to fry, quite frankly, with the access from, or the improvements that VDOT might make to the Beltway.
So that's still a piece that would need to be addressed. Okay.
Yeah, it's an expectation in the plan. This is not the vehicle for implementing that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We're gonna move on to the next nomination.
Thank you all.
And actually, before I started, we had a comment in the chat about what is FAR. So just briefly, FAR is floor area ratio, which basically is how intensity is measured. So basically, the higher the FAR, the more intense the development. So example, a 100,000 square foot parcel, if you build a 100,000 square foot building, that would be a 1.0 FAR. If you build a 50,000 square foot building, that would be a 0.5 FAR. So anyway, I hope that helps clear that up. The next nomination we're going to review is for Springfield Boulevard and the Springfield CBC. This nomination consists of 8 parcels located south of Old Keene Mill Road, east of Amherst Avenue, and west of the I-95 ramp at the intersection of Springfield Boulevard and Backlook Road. The site is surrounded by non-residential uses, which includes retail, restaurants, offices,
David,
and surface parking lots. Yes.
Make sure you pull up your presentation. It's the only thing.
No one can see my presentation? No. I can see it.
We can't see it.
Let me Let me go back. Let's try this again. Sorry about that. Okay, now can everyone see it? Great. Yep. So with this nomination, the nomination properties that are north of Springfield Boulevard are planned for retail uses at the base level with an option for office and retail use up to 1.0 FAR with substantial parcel consolidation. The area south of Springfield Boulevard and west of Backlook Road is planned for mid-rise office use with ground floor retail up to 0.7 FAR. with an option for some mix of uses up to 1.0 FAR with substantial consolidation. And those uses would be office. To the west, in Land Unit E, in the Springfield is the location of the Springfield CBC commuter garage, which is currently under construction and will be served by multiple bus routes. So the nomination proposes 604 multifamily units with ground floor retail consisting of 3 mid-rise buildings. The building on the northeastern side of the proposal is planned for approximately 260 units, and the 2 buildings proposed for the western portion of the nomination will contain approximately 172 units each. So some preliminary considerations from staff are the recent study by the Fairfax County EDA projects demand for approximately 1,000 multifamily residential units in Springfield through 2032. Additionally, adding an option for multifamily residential would further the goals recommended by the comprehensive plan for a mixed use center and would provide opportunities for housing within the Springfield CBC that are within walking distance to transit that will be served by the at the Springfield CBC commuter garage, which is currently under construction, as I previously stated. Also, the provision of additional housing opportunities is supported by broader community and countywide goals found in One Fairfax and the countywide strategic housing plan. However, the northeastern portion of the site abuts the I-95 ramp and Old King Mill Road and is subject to transportation generated noise. So modifications to the concept plan to help buffer the proposed use from transportation generated noise and in addition to proposed residential amenities and open spaces would be necessary to address the site constraints and ensure that the northeastern portion of this parcel is suitable for residential development. So next, we have Mark Viani, and he's going to provide an overview of this nomination. So Mark, if you want to share your screen.
I'm going to try to pull this up here real quickly.
Sure.
And let me see, is it showing up there?
Yes.
Okay, all right. First of all, thank you everybody for your time. Appreciate it. I know it's getting already after 8 o'clock, so I'll try to be brief. Thank you, David, for your presentation too. Just real quickly, walk right through it. Yeah, this is where we are within Franconia, as David showed. We're kind of just in the Springfield CBC, just west of the intersection of Old King Mill Road and the Belt and 95. A little bit zooming in here. This is our property. We have, this is where the Springfield Multi-Use Center is, the multimodal big bus garage is. Then we have 3 land bays. This is this land bay here. Those of you remember, in about 2018, we got a hotel approved for this property right here. That includes this old retail center here, this garage, this tow area, and a little small gas facility right there. We got that approved in 2018. In 2019, the end of 2019, we got ourselves through site plan, got our financing for the hotel, began demolition. We began environmental demolition, removing the asbestos, moving the lead pipes. This is all construction early 1950s-ish. And got halfway through that and COVID hit. So COVID hit, COVID killed all the financing for hospitality and all the hotels. And, we've been talking to the Hilton folks, and there's no chance any of that's going to come forward in the next 5 years. And so that stopped that part of the project cold. Since then, we've been trying to figure out what to do with this property, how we could possibly get it, into a better use. The challenge we've had is, what could you do with it? Could you do retail? Could you do office? There wasn't really a market for either one. The buildings themselves are half demolished. And what we started having a challenge was, we had people will come out with vehicles right here and they jump the curb right about here, come over here, kick debris and trash out of the back of their vehicle there, then drive right back on here and take off. And so we had a problem where about every 3 months or so, we would have to spend about $9,000 to have a team come out there and clean up trash and keep the area resecured. We also had folks that would kind of go in there, and we've had a problem. The police were vagrants would go into the building. People would go in there, try and steal pipe and stuff like that. You'd find vagrants sleeping in the building. So it's been quite a lot of expense. There's no money coming off the property. And so in an effort to kind of remedy that halfway through the recession, the pandemic, we put the tow truck operator back in the property. Problem is, and he did a very good job of keeping the area policed. Problem is since that happened, the property's been rezoned, and that use is no longer allowed under the new PDC rezoning. So working with the county, we agreed to have him pull out of there. And that created a situation where we really didn't know what to do with there, but we had this kind of site that needed to have something done with it. And it's a really good site and a really good location. And so we said, well, what can we possibly do? And during that time, we had, over here, this is this bay here. These are older 1950s retail as well. It's done okay during the pandemic, but it's not done great. Then over here you had retail, and then we have an old automobile dealership here too as well. We thought, well, is there a way to create kind of a gateway presence? So you have something from the bus depot here, using that kind of as a multimodal center, and having something kind of creates a new presence right here in terms of retail along the street frontage and residential on top, replacing what had been the hotel with a new residential use there, keeping it in context with, remember, we got across the street here, we have this is the Homewood Suites here, and this is the Residence Inn here. So you've got some fairly about 6-7 story tall hotels there. This will have about a 6 to 7 story garage as well. And so trying to say, well, what can we do to kind of match that height and keep it in context with what we see coming in the area, and start giving this area a shot in the arm. And we looked at the the market study. The market study talked about the need for there to be new multifamily residential in the area, to help kind of support some of the retail further to the south in the area, and the retail to the north, and provide kind of a shot in the arm in terms of development. And so that's what we came up with this proposal right here, which is there's your you can see there's your multi-story parking garage and your bus depot, and kind of connecting in here, and then having retail along the street frontage here, retail along the street frontage here, residential above, and kind of creating a presence there that goes over to here. And then you have where the hotel had been, taking basically the same footprint, only slightly enlarged. When we did the first project over here, we did not include this little sliver right here because this belonged to that hotel right there. The proposal now is to include that as well, and basically complete that entire block, and come in with residential here, residential here, residential here, all above retail here, and looking to create kind of a gateway connectivity here, and kind of a new town center, hopefully provide some new investment and injection of livability and market dollars going into the community around us. This is some examples of some of the designs we're looking at when this project finally comes forward, if it does come forward. But we're looking at doing high-end projects here, having really nice architecture and the like. Kind of a quick little kind of tour here. This would be as if you were coming from the bus center, kind of walking down Springfield. You'd have residential above retail, and retail, kind of this new kind of street, just redeveloped, made it nice. You have a nice sidewalks opportunities. We could put seating opportunities out there, opportunities for eating outside, again going kind of down the street here. Again, further close up, looking just kind of enlivening the street, kind of activating it. This is kind of looking further down that way from where you're coming down, where Amherst is. Looking further down, and again, just having a street presence there, having something nice and new, replacing kind of what's out there. And then you get down to the end of the street, when you get to where the hotel had been, again, having kind of this capstone here where we're going to be, having a hotel, not a hotel, where the hotel had been planned, but isn't going to happen anymore. A really nice high-end residential there that kind of creates the end of the street there, and creates great connectivity between where that northeastern land bay is down to where the bus terminal is. It is another option we're looking at in terms of design. And we do already have a developer that's looking at this particular property to go first. And it's Vista Residential. They do some very high-end, very nice projects. This is some examples of some of the projects they've done in the area. We're looking at modern architecture. We obviously would work with the community to find the preference people like, but we're looking to do something that really is kind of a elegant and an impressive upgrade to what's out there right now. This is an example of what they've done in terms of the center portions of their apartments. Adequate resident amenities. Making it very nice. So with regard to the comp plan right now, the comp plan we talk about this area here. Talks about here basically recommends between 0.7 to 1.5 FAR for office and retail. right? Unfortunately, there's not really much of an office market there. The retail we have there is struggling. The retail would probably do better, if in a newer facility, more activated area, and also with supporting residential right above it. It talks about down here having, basically between 0.7 to 0.1 FAR of retail. Again, what you have out there right now is older, struggling retail. You have old used car dealership there. You have dry cleaners, some nail salons, things like that. So the goal is to kind of just, keep the retail there, maybe, make it a little more, user friendly, a little more elegant, more residential right on top of it, and residential kind of capping it here and creating a viable connection from there to the bus terminal there, and kind of the beginnings, hopefully, of a whole bunch of new grass shoots for the further redevelopment of this area, the Springfield CBC. And so with that, what has changed in the area? The Springfield Mall is growing, mall redevelopment, National Geospatial, TSA going on in the area. One of the things that have changed since the last existing comp plan language is the office market has obviously suffered greatly. Retail market conditions aren't really great. Hotel, we had a really nice approved hotel ready to go forward with it, and that can't be financed anymore. And so really, keeping the retail, upgrading it, injecting residential consistent with what, the market study would like to see in there, I think would, help upgrade these properties and also better serve the adjacent retail properties now in that area. Also, the bigger thing also is the Springfield Multimodal Center is a kind of a game changer there. It provides a rather nice, transportation amenity right in the area. So that's what we've got proposed. Thank you very much. With that, I'll take your questions.
So it looks like Renko Hardison has his hand up.
I have a couple of questions. The first one's like a softball. What percentage of affordable housing are you intending to have there? I appreciate the reference to high-end places, but this area does have an affordability issue. So realistically, yes, you can find people to come in this area and pay whatever you're going to charge, but to serve the area, we should be thinking about people who can't afford those prices. The other question, which is probably a little harder for you, is the traffic, because at night the traffic dies completely, but morning and then like late afternoon. So by putting so much residential there, and then also having the shop presence, you're building a new facility, which means you're going to draw in people. And I'm curious how you plan to manage it.
Sure. I'll take them in order real quickly. With regard to affordable housing, the county has this, that would be determined during if this project, if we're authorized to go further and further consider this as part of the comprehensive plan process, we would be prepared to then move forward also with the rezoning. Through the rezoning process, the county has requirements both for affordable housing and for workforce housing, that we would be required to meet. Typically, what I'm finding mostly in TOD projects areas like this, there's usually some sort of additional negotiation for additional spaces like that. So we would provide at the minimum what's required by the county. I think, we'd have to see where we get when we get through the negotiations as to for approval, whether or not it be what the county wants or something above what the county typically asks for and plan. But, there would definitely be an affordable housing, there'd be a workforce component. And with regard to traffic, more traffic was one of the concerns we had here. That's why when we looked at the multimodal center, the bus provides an opportunity to frankly reduce some of the parking, reduce some of the traffic generation by, taking advantage of the mass transit right there. We also have direct access right to the highway. That's hopefully going to be something that helps out. But again, if this project were allowed to move forward from the comprehensive plan to a rezoning phase, we would have to do a traffic study as part of that process. And, there'd be a lot of questions we'd have to answer and analyze as we go forward.
Okay, next, Diane has her hand raised.
Hi, I have a few questions, and one of them was traffic. You answered that. The Would there be underground parking garages on all of these buildings? And you mentioned the northeast location having some kind of noise buffer from traffic generated noise. What types of things are you talking about?
Well, each of these land bays would have structured parking. So it'd be above ground, a parking garage above ground. It'd be wrapped, so the garage would not be visible from the outside. You wouldn't have underground parking. You'd have a parking garage within the building. And so that's how we'd handle parking for that one. With regard to noise attenuation, there is, there's the I-95 goes right next to our property. Actually, only one of the travel ramps right from there goes right next to it. The rest, the main part of the 95 is actually 500 feet from our property line. So the main part of traffic is actually quite a distance from us. But it's much like any other, you have buildings that are in areas where high traffic, where there's noises and like that, or if you're up next to a metro line or something like that. How you handle that is basically through architectural design. And that would be something we get into if we go forward into a rezoning, and that's by using thicker glasses, different textures, materials, in terms of building design, and that's how you're able to make sure, the goal basically being that the folks that living inside the unit, are able to live a life, that meets the county standards in terms of interior noise from exterior sources. And also this building, the first building that goes up there would actually act as almost like a sound wall for the properties further to the west too.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Nicole.
Hi there. So I just want to say thank you for putting the fence up around the Merv's building. I wanted to let you know that we appreciate the fence going up. I don't know if anyone told you that, but there is an illegal dumping issue in that area. And by not renovating that other set of buildings because the property owner doesn't want to participate or whatever, it's just going to shove it to there. That's kind of like a hidden area there, and they're just going to move it there. And the other thing is that in this area, there are a lot of blue collar workers with work trucks and work vans, and they use that spot there on Springfield Boulevard to park their work trucks because they don't fit in the garages. And the apartment complexes that surround our neighborhoods, like Springfield Gardens and Lerner and those other places, they have more residents than they have parking spaces as is. And so they're spilling over into the Springfield Plaza and into the VRE. And so for commuters, only 1,000 spaces were planned for that commuter garage, and sharing any of them with the hotels that are across the street or with the new apartment buildings will take away from the whole point of that garage and the fight that us commuters made to get the maximum amount of parking spaces we could out of that square. And it'll be really unfortunate for that, but just know that the rents in this area are lower than most of this county. And so a luxury building won't be attractive to the people who are currently in those because they can't really afford to move into something much more expensive than what they have, even if it's desirable. And with those higher rents comes more people per unit and more cars per unit. So consider that, making sure that there's enough parking for 3 cars per unit is probably about average. And it doesn't look like your design has that, but I do appreciate putting something pretty there because it doesn't look so good right now.
Thank you very much. And we're happy to work with you folks if this goes forward on the parking issues and the like. And, we want it, at the end of the day, it has to work for the community. So we'd like to have the opportunity to discuss that further.
Okay, Ann Blass has a question.
Hi, I'm curious about how development affects smaller locally owned businesses. And so if I don't know if you've had conversations with potential business occupants or maybe just generally from your experience in general, would your vision accommodate smaller locally owned businesses? Would those businesses be able to afford to occupy space in the type of vision that you have, or what could be expected in that circumstance?
That's a good question. Yeah, we've been some of these folks here have owned these properties for 50 years, you know, and a lot of them are long-term, some long-term residents, and almost all of them are frankly what you would call small and local businesses. They're, families. The goal is, to create, retail opportunities for the front, and those are retail properties. They're not going to really be, profit centers. They're activation centers. The money comes from the residential development. And so the goal will be, to the extent, a lot of those uses are uses that could go back in, the nail salon, things like that. But there are some other folks, and we hear it from them, where they're like, this area just isn't what it used to be. I don't get the kind of traffic I used to get, and so some of those businesses, frankly, our concern is just as we had what caused the redevelopment of the hotel was the fact that we had a cell phone store there at last, and a nail salon and a Chinese food store. And those were the last thing. You had 4 other bays that you just could not get tenants for anymore. And that's unfortunately kind of somewhat symptomatic of the area. And so our goal is obviously to try. You want to do what you can do to activate the streetscape. If you can keep existing commercial tenants in there or put them back in, great. And there's incentives to make that happen. Those are people But, we can't ignore unfortunately, what's happening in the area in terms of the commercial viability. And so this is a goal to maybe put that in kind of a more presentable format, with a market that's right adjacent to it, and hopefully allow, commercial to continue to thrive there.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Kurt has his hand raised.
Thank you. Yes, the gentleman just said some of those businesses aren't getting the traffic that they used to. And I think part of that is for all of us who live right around this area, getting from point A to point B in central Springfield is not all that simple just because of the roads and highways and byways. So I think a traffic study will have some very unique and challenging circumstances in this case. Again, I think part of the reason some of those businesses don't have the traffic they used to is just because it's so much harder to get to them because of the current configuration of roads, et cetera, created by the spaghetti interchange, reconstruction, et cetera. Related thought, one of the gentlemen earlier mentioned, hey, these places have direct access to the highway. Yep, but they don't have direct access from the highway. And again, back to, trying to get from A to B, coming off the highway to come down and do a U-turn by Giant there. And, the turn lane's already not long enough. So I think that the traffic study here is going to be an immense challenge, not just in terms of number of cars and parking, but the complexity of A to B to C is going to exacerbate a lot of the conditions of all of that, and people trying to cut through various areas and so forth. Directly related to the cars are the people. I live here in Crestwood, and if I want to get to the other side of 95 on foot or bike, you can't go up Old Keene Mill and across. Well, you can at great risk to life and limb. So there is a pedestrian crossover down further down Backlick there, but that's not real comfortable and convenient, and the walkway to get there gets overgrown with grass, blah, blah, blah. So for people to get around as well as cars, I think there needs to be a fair amount of thought in terms of whatever infrastructure and or pathways can be created or improved for the people as well coming along. Otherwise, thank you, though, for greatly improving the property, and hopefully Supervisor Lusk, if he's still listening, he'll get the other building there next to the MVC building taken care of so that we don't have those eyesores next to this brand new improvements. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Now, Diane, did you have another question?
Yes, I had a question about a former gas station parcel. I don't see that marked. What's going to happen there?
Are we talking about, let me, David, can I pull I'm going to pull the screen back up again, maybe make sure we understand what we're talking about here. Are we talking about this area right here?
No, north of it.
This area
right
right
at
here?
Old King Mill.
Yeah, right here.
That.
That's going to be subsumed within the new development, ma'am.
Oh, perfect.
It'll take
Thank
out the
you.
entire thing. Yes.
Okay, great.
It'll
Thanks.
look. Matter of fact, there's an example. This is one design, but it would take out the entire block.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe Stephen is next.
Did you say Steve Levinson?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Mark, I remember 3 years ago when you first opened up with your prospect of your hotel. I represent Springvale, which is the closest residential homeowner association to this project. I can't express anything more than just absolute horror at the blighted conditions that you've left us in 3 years. I just spoke to a man in my neighborhood complaining to me that he spent $40,000 putting a fence in because the homeless that live in your property decided to live in his property for a while. And that was completely not good to him. I have neighbors who have complained to me that the homeless have gone to sleep on their front step. You've really adversely affected our neighborhood in a really bad way. If you're looking for our support, and you spoke about community, you don't have it now, and we don't trust you. We think we need to see what positive steps you're going to take with your existing property, developed or not, and that would be at a minimum completing the demolition of the property there, and perhaps fencing it, or at least having it open so the police can observe what's going on that property. But it's been a nightmare for us since you came onto the scene. What you're displaying looks nice, but so did the hotel. So, can you give me 20 seconds on what you intend to do between now and development time to improve this area?
Well, I can also tell you about what we have been doing. I mean, we've got, and more importantly, we're happy to meet you out on site with the Fairfax County Police. We've got, I agree with you. It's been a problem. And the problem is we got the project approved. The project was halfway through demolition and the project lost all the money because they canceled the financing on it. So there was no money at all coming into the property. So the first thing you did was go ahead and try to secure the property, put some fencing up there. You can't have someone out there 24/7 to be on the property. So we put the fencing up there. Well, people will get through the fencing. So we call the police. We work with the police to pull guys out of the building. And we had a number of people charged, and we'd constantly go after them. Then in order to get a permanent presence on there, we put the tow truck operator back in the property. Unfortunately, because the zoning had changed, the county said, well, the tow truck operator is no longer allowed on the property. So we had to we got cited for having the tow truck operator on the property. So we had to move the tow truck operator out of there. And then on top of this, about every 3 months or so, we're having to send a crew in there, spend about $9,000 to $12,000 every 3 months to go on the site and clean it back up. We're happy to. Yeah.
Those multiples of $9,000 and $12,000, if you had just demolished the property and given some visibility to it, an empty lot would have been a lot better than what you left us with.
No, and that's the challenge. That we were in the middle of environmental demolition. You have to first remove. You have to pay a specialized demolition team to remove all the asbestos, remove the lead piping and stuff like that. And that's where we're halfway through it. Then the financing went away, and that environmental demolition team goes away. If it was just a matter of just coming with a bucket loader and knocking it over, that'd be a much easier thing to do. But we're not allowed to do that under environmental permits because we've got asbestos, we've got lead, we've got all manner of things there. And so this is, and I would say, the county staff's aware of it. If there is one poster child property in terms of development that got screwed during the pandemic, it's this property. And unfortunately, that is the side effects that are the things you have with the homeless problems. I remember when you and I were talking about this with the hotel, you guys specifically asked us, and we're happy to do it. When we put the benches out in front of the hotel, put the armrests in the middle of it, so people couldn't sleep on there. And so we're aware of the issue. We're trying to, within the limits of what we had in terms of financially available to do it, we've done it. Then when we tried to get, at least another operator on there to keep an eye on the property, for the 3 or 4 months that we had the tow truck up under, they did a very good job about.
I sense this isn't the forum for us to discuss this in great detail, but
we're more than happy.
I wait your comments on what you intend to do to improve that property and at least alleviate some of the effect on our neighborhood. You can go to the next speaker.
Okay, let's Renko Hardison.
Yes, I had something else I was gonna say, but I'll bring up the homelessness. It's a little unfair to blame a developer for the homeless problem when every place in this country is suffering from it. It's because people have nowhere to go, and they're going to go wherever they can go. And unless we're going to actually help them, they're going to continue to be homeless. But my other thing I was going to say, are you speaking about traffic and cars? Are you thinking about the possibility of having an incentive to encourage people to actually use public transportation? Because if you have an incentive, and I can think of that incentive as you actually charge people what a parking space actually costs. And if your tenants actually have to pay what parking actually costs, then they think twice about owning a vehicle. And if they're using the buses, if they're using the metro facilities, then you're probably going to have less of a cluster and alleviate some of the residents' concerns.
Right, I agree with everything you just said, and that's kind of, if we go into this, we go into the rezoning plan. Yeah, that's part of what you would consider doing the rezoning. There are things where the last couple of projects we built, you've had, you break away the parking from the unit. So when you get a unit, you don't automatically get parking. You decide if you want to buy parking or not. And then you have what's called traffic demand management program, where we're incentivizing people. A big incentive part of this was, the proximity to the bus depot. And you incentivizing people to use the bus, or, you may have a situation where you may have a shuttle going over to the metro station, things like that. That was actually, the shuttle was actually something we had, as part of the hotel as well.
Thank you. We need to move on to the next nomination, but I'll let Nicole ask a question or comment.
I do just want to say one thing about that property there, and that not everything that has been complained on by the residents in this area went easy. Complaints about illegal dumping and just garbage and people living in a camper and Unity Towing selling cars out of there were all complaints that multiple residents over here complained about and fought with Rodney Lusk's office. And the response from not only Rodney Lusk's staff, but the county code enforcement team were that the owners were not responsive after Unity Towing moved in. And so if you can give us more guarantee that we're not going to see those same fights that we have to have just to clean up the area, a building like that would be amazing there if it could look anything like any of your drawings. But to know the fight that we had to make in order to get the owner, you guys, to actually clean it up, residents shouldn't have to go through that much work. A lot of heartache from the residents over here to make those complaints. So we need a little bit more of a guarantee that that's going to, not repeat itself when new residents move into your beautiful buildings, because it would be a shame to have buildings that beautiful go downhill.
I agree.
Okay, well, everyone, I want to thank you for your comments. We're going to move on to the next nomination. Okay, I'm going to try to move quickly with this. This nomination is from Frontier Plaza. It's located in the Franconia Springfield TSA on Frontier Drive across from Springfield Town Center. The site is currently planned for and developed with the one-story Frontier Plaza Shopping Center. To the north of the site is the Forestdale Elementary School and the Broder Family Cemetery. To the south is the Springfield Common Shopping Center. The area to the east is planned for and developed with single-family neighborhoods. And to the west, across Frontier Drive, is the Springfield Town Center, which consists of an enclosed shopping mall. The parking lots at Springfield Town Center are planned and approved for redevelopment as a mixed-use town center with residential, retail, and office use up to 1.7 FAR. The nominator has proposed a mix of multifamily and retail uses up to a 0.2 FAR with approximately 117,000 square feet of retail and 634 multifamily residential units that'll be served by underground and structured parking. The building heights of the proposed development would range from 12 stories along Frontier Drive, which would taper down to a one-story retail building along the property's eastern boundary, which is adjacent to the residential neighborhoods. The proposed buildings along Frontier Drive would include ground floor retail with residential above. Just some preliminary considerations from staff are the proposed land use intensity of the proposed development is higher than the existing development in the surrounding area, but it is similar to the mixed-use redevelopment option for the Springfield Town Center. Additionally, a recent study by the Fairfax County EDA projects demand for approximately 1,000 multifamily residential units in Springfield through 2032. Additional housing and ground floor retail also supports the vision for the Springfield Transit Station area, especially in proximity to the metro station and other areas planned for higher intensity mixed use. Also, the provision of additional housing opportunities is supported by broader community and countywide goals found in One Fairfax and the Countywide Strategic Housing Plan. If this nomination is added to the work program, consideration should be given to the compatible buffering and line of sight from the single-family neighborhoods located to the east, as well as multimodal access and connections to nearby destinations and transit. Also, access to the adjacent cemetery and internal circulation should also be included as part of any type of plan amendment. Next, I want to turn it over to David Gill, who represents the nominator, and will provide a brief presentation of the nomination. David.
Thank you, David, for turning it over, and appreciate everyone's patience here, staying to allow us to back clean up on this nomination night here. Again, my name is David Gill. I'm a land use attorney with the law firm of Wire Gill and representing the Grosvenor Group. Grosvenor is probably one of the premier international developers in the world. They are as well capitalized and experienced in both retail and mixed-use development as just about any company you'll come across. They've owned and operated this center for almost approaching 2 decades now and has spent considerable time and effort, frankly, investing in this particular application. While Fahim's pulling up from my office is pulling up our particular proposal, we can go ahead and jump forward to our team. Grosvenor also brought on board Kevin Lyon from Bignell Architects to begin to think about how mixed use might work here. And really, that's what the story of this nomination is. The Springfield Town Center to the west of us and the Home Depot property to the south of us, also within the Springfield CBC, have mixed use recommendations. Currently, we have only retail options under the comprehensive plan. And the way we believe the future of retail is headed, given the way the investment has happened at the Springfield Town Center, our proximity to Metro, we really would like to have the option to explore mixed use as we move forward, especially residential mixed use. And the concepts that we're showing here tonight is just our first take at it. We don't have all the answers. We just want to have the permission to begin to have the discussion with you as we see the writing on the wall as retail could potentially evolve as time goes on. We are, as Fahim's showing right here, right at that primary entrance to both Springfield Town Center as well as to our larger shopping center. And you guys are probably very familiar with it. It's got the PetSmart in it and the Best Buy, two traditional anchors that generate a lot of traffic and frankly, local serving uses. It's 106,000 square feet, so that's a substantial retail size. This is what we're proposing laid out on the particular property with Frontier Drive. And really the focus is on creating retail that works where people will not want to use their cars, where people want to walk to the services and experiences and amenities. It is really an amenity-driven environment that drives the success of both the residential and the retail. I think Mark Vianney actually touched on it very well in what he was saying, in that a lot of the times the retail is the driver to make the residential successful. So you have to spend the time and the effort to get the open spaces right, to get the walking environment right, to get the built environment where the pedestrians experience it right to make it work. You know, that said, we certainly recognize where we are at in terms of the transition with the school to the north of us and the existing Springfield Forest community to the east of us. This map is I like talking about because it shows the brick wall along the east side of the property line there. That's that first dashed line. From there, we would honor it at least 65 feet to where the existing Best Buy is. So that's that white building. We propose not going any higher than the existing retail is for that particular side of the facility. So it would be 300 feet until you would see us to actually start to go vertical with our construction. I think what's also unique about this proposal is we're talking about underground parking here, and that really necessitates going to a more vertical concept. That's why we're talking about 10 to 12 stories for our two particular buildings right now. That's what helps justify going below grade with the parking and focusing more on structured parking and getting away from that surface parked environment into a more walkable vertical community. What's nice about our proposal too here is it retains enough of a presence to attract anchor retail tenants. And when I'm talking about anchor retail tenants, whether it's entertainment, you know, a grocer, it is those type of larger floor plate tenants that really drive the success of the rest of the retail. And we think that with our footprint, we can still keep that in and really make it successful for the rest of the residential that's in there. These are just highlighting, I think, a few of the things that I've already talked about, our focus on making this walkable, our focus on making this mixed use, making that ground floor experience, premier experience in Springfield. And we're really trying to mirror the approaches both of Springfield Town Center and the language for the buffer and transition, including the 14-degree of site view angle, which, depending on how vested and into the comprehensive plan you are, there is language that on the Home Depot side talks about a 14-degree view shed. So if you're standing in the front yard of Springfield Forest closest to the property, when you look out, it is a 14-degree angle before you see any buildings, meaning it keeps it lower and the height pushed closer to Frontier so that it is less of a more of a appropriate transition for that community. Can you go ahead to the next page? This is how the ground floor would work in this particular environment. We have the two anchor retail spots on the east. The 40,000 is sort of ideal for a grocer, or the 22 for a more urban grocer if it's a Trader Joe's style size development. And then your more traditional inline spaces where you would see you know, your restaurants, your services, your fitness concepts, things like that, that we think could be really successful in this area. Can you go to the next one, Fee? This is a cross section just so you can see how it works. And I think C is the one I want to draw everyone's attention to, because that really shows how we're trying to focus our development on the west side towards Frontier and really not changing the experience at all for that first 300 feet, which is, you know, 100 yards, you know, length of a football field before we begin to go vertical. And again, trying to honor that view side angle that I had mentioned before. Can you go ahead? So this is just some precedent images of the type of pocket parks, pedestrian, and streetscape we are really focused on. We want to really try to amenitize it and really make it walkable, because we think those linkages to the retail and then to along Frontier to the metro itself are going to be what's key to making this development successful. So you can see the level of activation that we really want to try and get there. Can we jump to the next one? These would be the pocket parks, sort of the multi-use urban style pocket parks that we think could work. These would be potentially open to the public as well as our residents, and really help to activate it in a variety of ways. And then how it all comes together is sort of what we're thinking about in the next slide, which is here. And this is where you see that pedestrian concept with the vertical residential above it. You got your walkability, your street furniture, the nice amenities, the stamped concrete on the sidewalks, really high end to justify that investment in being able to go into concrete construction, which allows you to go a little bit higher, as well as to justify some of this underground parking that we talked about. Go to the next one, Fahim. And just a couple of things here that I want to talk about, because I know it's getting late, but we really do think this is the right time to consider it. The way it works with retail is you've got a series of leases that guarantee the spaces are going to be occupied. And there's a question in the chat we can jump into and bring and go back to answer. But really, to get retail right requires careful consideration of how those leases work together. And anybody who's been through some of the experiences with what, like, say, happened with Circuit City, for example, know that those retail assumptions sometimes can change on a dime. And right now, we just don't have the tool, if we needed to pivot in the very near term, to allow for a mixed-use concept. And that's why we really do think it's worth having the discussion now, having the consideration now, to figure out a way for this site to complement, through a mixed-use environment, what's happening at the town center and what's happening to the south of us. We're prepared and certainly understand the need to respect the angles of sight, the landscape buffers, our building heights, provide that pedestrian access to the Springfield Metro. And importantly, I think it was mentioned before, we think this is a great opportunity to incorporate affordable and workforce housing. We know that's important to Supervisor Lusk. We know that's important to the community. And we think that's something we can achieve here with a more urban style apartment that allows people to live in a place where maybe they don't always need to have a car. And we think that's a real nice complement to what can happen here in Springfield itself. With that, we really do want to have the conversation. I think one thing that Grosvenor and Doug's team has been willing to do is invest in how to get it right. If anything I want you guys to take away is they want to have this conversation about how to get it right and how to work with the community to have an option for mixed use in some shape, so that we can be nimble enough to respond if and when the retail market begins to evolve. Doug, would you want to add anything on the retail side, or would you like to open it up to questions?
No, I think, David, you did a great job explaining all the key points. The one thing that I would highlight is what we presented is very in line with what's already in the comprehensive site plan and complements the Springfield Town Center. And as David mentioned, this shopping center was originally built back in 1994 as a neighborhood shopping center with very low density. David is very, very polite, is using the word retail evolving very candidly. I wouldn't say it's dire, but it is rapidly changing. And I talk to retailers every day, big box to your Lululemons or what have you, and they all want this high density walkability, and that's where they're moving to. So places like Bethesda, Tyson Corner, Loudoun County at One Loudoun, those things are the areas that are really attracting the retailers. And it's obviously following a lot of the new multifamily apartments and condos and what have you that's going along with it. And so with this proposal, we ultimately want the just not be caught off guard, because these things do change very fast. And I will share, it is public information just to show how fast it changes. Bertucci's has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy twice, so they're currently in that. So just kind of shows you COVID really changed things. I would say it really accelerated the involvement of retail and things like that. So anyway, just appreciate your guys' time this evening.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay, David, if you're through with your presentation, I can open the floor to questions. I see. We'll first start with Gail Niddle.
Thanks for taking this call. I appreciate your thought going into this, and please correct me if I've not heard you correctly. You talk about community and affordable housing and walkability, but it seems to me that you're creating a new community here of people who live in this area. So what about those of us, for example, on the other side of Backlick Road, who have been used to coming to Best Buy or Ulta or whatever else is over there? Is there going to be parking, or are we not going to be included in that? Is it going to be that insular a community? That's one question. And then the other thing is the parking and how many cars you expect. There are people who don't have cars, I guess. I don't know how many are in your community, but here where we live in Springfield, a family may have 3 or 4 cars. And the idea of being close to Metro and encouraging people to use it sounds good, but in reality, I don't see it happening. I think if a person wants to go on a trip, if they want to just go from one place to another, they're not going to walk from where we live over on this side over to that side. So what about those two questions?
Sure, Gail. I appreciate both great questions. As you can imagine, getting the parking right is as important to Doug and to his team to make the retailers happy as anything else. And whether it's Ulta, whether it's Best Buy, they are very specific on their demands to make sure their parking is free, accessible, and easy for their customers. That is the heartbeat of their business and what they need to make happen. So absolutely, that parking would remain open to the community from that level. In terms of traffic generation and how this would work, absolutely, that's got to be part of the discussion. For those who've been through the rezoning process, there are absolutely things that we would expect as part of this called transportation demand management strategies, which guarantee that we couldn't develop our maximum residential amount until we've demonstrated that we've met the reduction in traffic that we say we can achieve through carpooling, through use of Metro. So I certainly don't disagree with you that people like to drive. Look, I drive in my car. I certainly get that, but it would be attracting a different type of resident who would want this lifestyle to live here with this access to this retail within walking distance to Metro, within walking distance to a school, within walking distance to Springfield Town Center. So it would be a very different type of lifestyle than what currently has options for in Springfield.
I offer one more idea too, and this is
please
not only applicable to yours, but to the one just previous to it. Springfield is not Tyson's. It's not these other communities that are constantly pointed out. Springfield has a character of its own. I'm hoping that anything that's built is in conformity to the nature of what Springfield is, not trying to look like Mosaic or some other place that's ultra modern or whatever. If we wanted to live in Tyson's, we would. We live here in Springfield for very good reasons. It's a suburban community and it doesn't have to look like a metropolitan area. Just my 2 cents.
Understood, Gail. And we're largely trying to follow some of the public policy guidance in terms of maximizing that public infrastructure investment that Metro represents, but certainly
I
understand.
think it's us, Bill, but I don't even know how to fix it on this.
Tom, I think you're off mute there.
Okay, well, thank you, Gail. And next, I see Kurt has his hand raised.
Thank you. Mine is a general question. Sorry, I missed the first couple of minutes of this session. What is this session? Is this like a public courtesy meeting? Is this an official meeting by Fairfax County government? Are the comments being shared here? I'm doing air quotes. Are these official comments, if you will, that are being collected, or is this just kind of a listening session? Well, what's kind of the framework of this particular session tonight in terms of formality and the whole comprehensive plan / development process? Over.
Yeah, Kurt. This is a nomination review that SSPA we received 8 SSPA nominations in the Franconia district. So we reviewed 4 last night at an in-person meeting, and we're reviewing 4 this evening. And we're just here to get feedback from the community. And this, this is just the very beginning of the process. These are just nominations. We're here to get feedback, and then going forward, these nominations will be heard by the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors will take into consideration the feedback that we hear at these meetings, and they'll decide whether or not these become plan amendments. And then if this were to become a plan amendment, then it would go through the whole typical process of plan amendment, which would include community meetings and a Planning Commission and a Board of Supervisors hearing. So I hope that
Thank
clears that up. Sure. And if Kurt, if you don't have any additional questions, we can move on to Nicole.
And
Hi there.
real quick, Nicole, before we move on, Tom Sachs, I think you might be sharing your screen right now, but we're just seeing your Teams browser. I don't think that was intended. David, would you want to kind of take back the screen share?
Yeah, let me. Okay. I can do that. Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to share that I did hear the comment about Bertucci's, and the retail market across the world is being changed by COVID and people's different behaviors, and also increased crime. I can't see Ulta staying in business for very much longer with the crime that they have, but in that area over there is no grocery store. In our area over here in Crestwood, we have like 7. So, a Trader Joe's over there would be good for the new apartment complex that's going in at the mall, the 2 that are over there, possibly if they put one over there by TSA. But there is no guarantee that that mall will be viable in a few years, because, that company isn't doing well either financially. And so considering building, a new community over there, take into consideration that what's currently in business over there, is struggling. There's a strip mall in front of Home Depot. Every single store in the front is empty, except for the Hangry Burger on the side, which has like 6 parking spaces they're sharing with a giant gym. What's going to happen with that building when they all leave? I mean, the Next Day Blind Place is barely hanging in there. And so that area over there, it could use a lot of development, but what's currently there and what's currently owned, it's not doing well financially. And so, the face of that might look different once you guys get your project going. And whatever goes into those buildings should be things that people need, like dry cleaners, a nail place, a place for men to get their hair cut. That shopping center has a place for men to get their hair cut. That's rare in this area. Nail places, they're everywhere, but those are the things that people could easily come down from their apartment, get their nails done, and go right back upstairs, on their lunch break if they're working from home. So those are things that, to consider. The pet store is very important to this community. We lost our other one to Kingstown. And so, when retail goes into this area over here, they don't consider what people are actually needing. So we continue to get, food places that, different kinds of Thai restaurants, but we don't get things we need, like, actual services that people would need. So consider that in your retail plan. A bank or a nail place, hair place, dry cleaners, those things.
Nicole, I think Doug may hire you when he moves forward with redevelopment to figure out how to get some of those services in the community, because I think those were a lot of his thoughts too about how, again, we can sort of amenitize the retail to get folks to feel like they can walk to all those services rather than drive in their car. And having that variety, I think, is key to it. We hear you loud and clear about the PetSmart and being important to the community, and we'd love to have them as long as they want to be there. I think it's just, as Doug said, the challenge in retail right now, it is tough to know from a landlord's perspective, when you sign some of these leases, whether they're going to be able to fulfill the end of the lease. And just having an option in the plan for us to be able to respond to that changing environment would be very beneficial as we begin to plan the next life cycle of this center.
Okay, Nicole, if you don't have any further questions, we have Allison Shore is next. Allison?
Yes, hi, thank you. David, thank you for your presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes, Allison.
Okay. So first of all, I like your plan. My concern is that if you have this competing project going on with the one on Oak Key Mill and Backlick Road, how much construction is that going to bring into the area in a very short time? And parking, I think somebody else mentioned, is a problem too. But to have these competing projects going on with trucks in and out of a already very hugely populated corridor, what is that going to look like for the residents?
It's a great question, Allison, and I think as Dave Stinson was talking about, this really is sort of the first inning of a 9-inning process just to get through a plan amendment. And then after that, we'd still have to go through a rezoning. And then after that, a site plan approval, and then construction could begin. On top of the fact that we still have our retail environment, and we want to maintain that being successful moving forward until we can negotiate the leases in a way that we think makes sense. To be very candid, I'm not sure we would ever overlap with a competing project until we were further along in the process and had more concrete idea for when we would actually begin construction. Standing here today, I think anything at a minimum is probably 3 to 5 years off from any construction just to get through this preliminary planning process.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. And my question was, has the area that you're talking about already been rezoned for multi-use, or is the zoning part of your planning?
The only part that has been rezoned is Springfield Town Center proper. Neither the Home Depot, I believe, or our site has been rezoned to permit mixed use. And in fact, our comprehensive plan only permits retail currently.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, next is Marta Morrissey.
Yes, hi. Thank you for the opportunity to make a comment. I have a comment and I also have a question. We're talking about several places here for housing, the presentation just before this one. And then we have residential being built in the southwest corner of the town center block. So we're talking about a lot of large buildings that are going to house a lot of people. And I'm very excited that, there's interest in Springfield for this. But I'm concerned about the architecture. And when I'm looking at these pictures and proposals, a lot of this looks alike. It looks very grid looking. And I'm concerned about the interest in the architecture from one building to the next. I know we want buildings to blend and look like they, are compatible with what's around them. But I just want to make the comment that I'd like to see some more effort maybe put into character in the buildings. Because I'd hate to see our landscape end up looking a lot like, projects of New York, where one building looks a lot like the character of the next building. But it'd be nice to see some interest there. So that is my comment. And my question is, you're talking about 625 units in this area. What is the breakdown in general of how many bedrooms, so I can get an idea of how this might impact the schools, Forestdale right there, and Key, and Lewis High School, and then the previous presentation that affects Garfield, obviously. So are you imagining that these are going to have a lot of children, or do you think these are going to be single working people or couples that are going to be using the metro to get to work? What are you imagining is the type of families that will be filling these properties?
Marta, it's a great question, and I'll take your first comment on the architecture first. I think when you were talking, I saw Kevin Lyon, who's our architect, diligently taking notes to make sure that we begin to address that. I will say, in terms of architecture, we are so far at the beginning process. We haven't really done any significant iteration of that other than to say we want to convey that we're willing to put in the time and effort to do it right and to do it high quality, and are certainly open to the feedback that you're providing in terms of how to maybe make it work so that it is a Springfield project and not a Tyson's project and not a Reston project or a Mosaic project. So we certainly appreciate that.
Thank you.
In terms of your second question, these are the way the average works. These are probably going to average 850 square feet a unit. So I think a vast majority are probably going to be 1-bedrooms or studios with potentially a few 2-bedrooms. But I think realistically, that's what we're looking at. Kevin, seeing you nodding, saying that's probably right. So in terms of marketing, yes, it's going to be, frankly, empty nesters or folks who have yet to start their family, who we think would be most attracted to this type of lifestyle. And I will say, to the county's credit, they do have a lot of studies in terms of student generation based on areas like Tyson's, and can really point to how these type of developments do generate students. And that will be part of the process in evaluating these nominations as they move forward.
Thank you.
Ann Blass has a question.
Hi. So how does the retail mix typically occur for a development like this? Does the developer go out and recruit retail, or just advertise and the retail will come to you? Is there a normal process? And kind of like a more focused aspect of my question is, if we're interested in not losing the Best Buy and the PetSmart, is there any typical way that the local citizen can engage in that process?
Well, but beyond continuing to go there and buy their stuff, absolutely. But I mean, we'll certainly hear that. And Doug, you can kick me under the virtual table here if I'm saying this wrong. But a lot of what makes retail successful is those key anchors. And those are the ones we try to go out and have those relationships early in the process, because that drives everything else in terms of the retail strategy. So, take, for example, Mosaic, getting that Target and the Mom's Organic, those were sort of two of those key anchor drivers and then the theater, to getting folks to come consistently. And I think that's the sort of strategy we would employ here, is what is sort of that high-end key anchor that we could attract to help drive the rest of the retail strategy for the spaces.
I can add some additional color as well. For pretty much any mixed-use developer of this kind of scale, we all try to get the grocery anchor as our lead anchor tenant. That's kind of the big impetus, because a lot of times that's what the community wants. And selfishly, from a financing side, that's what also the lenders would typically like as well. And to your point about how do we go about recruiting, there's a big conference called ICSC. And so let's say if we have the opportunity where we could develop something kind of like this, we'll have a concept plan, and we'll go to these big ICSC conferences, and we literally pitch, call, Harris Teeter, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, basically the Class A tier retailers, and we talk about how great the Springfield community is, how walkable it is. These are how many potential customers that you have. Here's how great the local economy is and how resilient it is with TSA being there with all the good mix. But a lot of times what we need is to be able to kind of give them some guideposts, having some confidence that we're able to deliver, and that the community's kind of behind our project. That really, really helps. And again, it's ICSC. That you guys can kind of look up, and that's where all the key retailers typically go and gather, and that's where we pitch. In fact, I'm actually going there in May in Las Vegas.
I think we're going too, Doug, so we'll see. We'll see you out there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Marta, did you have another question, or?
No, I'm sorry. I forgot to take my hand down.
No worries. So it's almost 9:30. Oh, Looks like Nicole has a question. Nicole?
I just had a really quick question too. If you look at the census for this area, it doesn't show that the population is really having like a rapid incline of people moving in here. But do you guys, with all these new complexes that are, you know, coming up in this area, Springfield is definitely one of the more affordable areas in this county. Like most people choose to come here because they can't afford Herndon, Vienna, Reston. You know, that's way out of some people's price range. So keeping this area affordable is what's keeping people from moving in here. But having 400 to 500 unit complexes built in every available space, do you guys really anticipate the population growth in the next 5 years to fill those spaces? Or will the communities of the us with older homes see vacant houses as people choose to move over to the newer, nicer houses that have no, you know, landscaping needs instead of living in a home that you have to do all this work in? Is that what you anticipate, is some conversions to that and then a large population increase, or what's the idea?
So I will say is, as a region as a whole, there's absolutely the need for additional housing units. And one of the tools Fairfax County is really focused on is creating those opportunities in the CBD near metro stations. And so our hope is to be able to capitalize on it. I think what you heard from Tim Sampson at the beginning is the fact that since 2010, there hasn't been any multifamily delivered in this area. Here and frankly, Richmond Highway have sort of skipped over what was a fairly robust period for multifamily growth. There were a few things over in that area, but frankly, nothing really here in Springfield, even though the town center mall itself was rezoned for that in 2008. So it's definitely not cannibalizing existing residents. I don't think that's ever going to be the goal. I think it is attracting folks who want to live a different lifestyle than a lot of the people, frankly, who live here now, where you do have your home. Now, our hope is maybe some of you guys do want to get rid of having to mow the lawn and rake the leaves. You know, that'd be great. We'd welcome you in the new buildings. But I think there is enough growth and frankly opportunity for the type of person who wants to have the opportunity to get into Arlington and Alexandria quicker from Metro and capitalize on that, it makes a lot of sense to invest in Springfield.
Just a quick, at Grosvenor, we actually commissioned pretty extensive study on actually aging and how that affects housing actually. And what was very interesting is that in this kind of particular generation or this time period, a lot of people are choosing to retire in place in the homes that they grew up in, or let's say it's the home that they bought, you know, as a couple. So way back when the tradition was, or the normal was, as soon as you retire, you would retire into an apartment or like someplace else. But a lot of people are just choosing to stay. And according to this report, a lot of people are actually, because of that, there's a little bit of a housing crisis in terms of first-time home buyers, affordable residential units, and things of that nature. So that's kind of my long-winded way of saying is it doesn't really cannibalize the existing single-family homes. So if you guys are fortunate enough to have single-family homes, those are exceptionally rare and will be more rare. In fact, in places like in California, they're starting to ban single-family home developments just because of the housing crisis. So just wanted to share that little tidbit.
Thanks. I see Carol has her hand up.
Yes, I just have a quick question. David, you may have mentioned this earlier and I missed it, but are you looking at rentals or condos?
Almost certainly rentals in this situation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, if there aren't any more questions, we should probably wrap up because we've gone a half hour over. I just wanted to show everyone the next step in this process will be the Planning Commission workshop. As you can see from the slide, there are 4 dates scheduled, and these hearings, these workshops will start on February 22nd at 7:30 p.m. And if you do have any questions or comments, and please send them to me at the email address on this slide. And again, I just want to thank everyone for attending, and everyone have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.